All right, let's go ahead and open to page number 6 in our packets. Today, to start, we were supposed to have questions 9 through 14 attempted. So to start, I just want to go through 9 through 14 with you to give you a chance to double check. Now, if it's something where you didn't understand it, make sure you're asking about it if you're not sure after I go through the explanation. And then you will have the opportunity to do some more practice today with the two-step equations. So at the very least, if you didn't complete them, at least follow along while I go through them and get the information down to how to solve each problem. So then you can use those as a resource as you're doing your practice today. So as we start with number 9, remember the first thing we want to do is figure out where our variable is, which is our letter. We want to get that variable by itself. So as I look at number 9, I see that I have an x over on the left side of the equation. My goal is to get the x by itself and move away everything else on that side. So at some point, the 0.4 and the 9 need to be moved away from the x. Our step number 2 says we need to do our addition or subtraction first. So in number 9, I see I have a plus 9. Our inverse, or to undo plus 9, is to subtract 9 from both sides. Positive 9, negative 9, plus 9, minus 9 on the left gives me a 0. Make sure then that we are writing down what we have left on that left side. Some of us are trying to do all the steps rolled into one. It's a 2-step process. Writing down each step is going to help us stay organized, and it's going to help us make less mistakes. Then over on the right side, 11 minus 9 gives me 2. Notice, guys, my equal signs just keep following right down. I've seen some people draw a line down their paper to keep things going too, and that's a great plan as well. That's perfectly fine. However you choose to show that, but we need to make sure we're keeping the left and right sides separate. I also like to draw that horizontal line after I do one step. I like to keep all my steps separate. So now we have 0.4 times x. Remember, when the number is right next to the variable, that means we're multiplying. So to undo multiplication, I need to use division. And that's something, guys, go ahead and pop that right in your calculator. And if it's something that's starting with decimals, if we end up with a decimal answer, that's okay. So we end up with x equals 5. Now for each of these that I'm showing you today, I'm not going to do the check every time. I'm probably going to do it for the first 2 just to refresh you on the check. And then from there, I'm not going to show the check on the others just to save us a little time today. So if I check, I have my 0.4. Instead of x, I'm going to put a 5. Plus 9, does that equal 11? Remember, we talked yesterday, this entire side, you can put that in your calculator just as you see it, parentheses and all. The parentheses are up above the 8 and 9 keys if you're not sure where they're at on your calculator. So if I put that left side in my calculator, I do get a total of 11. Means the left side equals the right side. X equals 5 is the winner. It balances my equation. As I look at question 10, remember, figure out where your variable is first. There's my m over on the right. My job is to get m by itself. So that means the negative 10 and the negative 1.5, we need to move those out of there using our inverse operations. We want to start by doing any adding or subtracting first. So that means I'm looking at my negative 10. The opposite or the inverse of negative 10 is positive 10. Negative 10 plus 10 is going to give me a nice 0 over on the right side. Negative 18 plus 10, I get negative 8, equals. Negative 10 plus 10 is 0. Over on the right side, I have a negative 1.5, and I still have my m. Make sure you're showing that step. You should have that work on your paper. I know for some of us, we kind of do some scratch work off to the side or things like that. Let's start now with our 2 steps. I know in 1 steps it was kind of tough. Miss Golly, it's just 1 step. I know what I'm doing. Well, now that we have 2 steps, we need to stay a little more organized. That's to help you stay organized, and it's to help me be able to look through your work and figure out maybe which step wasn't correct if we don't have the right answer. So keep things organized. To finish it off, we have negative 1.5 times m, so we need to divide by that negative 1.5. Make sure what you are dividing by is negative 1.5. Now, if you put that in your calculator, you're going to end up with 5.3, and it does repeat. If you want to use your fraction to decimal key, you have to press the second key and then the fraction to decimal key. So it has the F to D up above it. If you want to change it into a fraction, you can use that fraction to decimal key on your calculator, and you would get 5 1/3. When you go to check, you're going to need that 5 1/3 to check. So negative 10 minus 1.5 times 5 1/3. Or you could change that 5 1/3 to a mixed number. We talked about that yesterday if you need to. Oops, sorry. So negative 18, I put the the right hand side of my calculator, and I get negative 18. Now for the rest of these, I'm not going to show the check just to save us a little time today. At this point, you should be able to check yourself. If not, make sure you ask how to check. We've shown it a lot. We've had a lot of opportunity to practice it. So if you're still not sure how to check, let us know. In number 11, I find where my variable is. There's v. I want to leave v there and clear everything else away on that side. I start with any addition or subtraction first. I see I have a plus 14. So to undo that, I'm going to subtract 14. What is left over on the left side is v divided by negative 0.8. Then over on the right side, I do my subtracting, and I end up with 25. Notice my step. I showed the subtracting 14 on both sides, and then I also wrote down what I have left after I subtract the 14. Now I can see I have v divided by negative 0.8, so I need to multiply both sides by negative 0.8. And my v equals negative 20. Now with 12 through 14, it's something that we did work on yesterday quite a bit. It was our main focus, trying to figure out what we do when we have a fraction as our coefficient, or in other words, the number in front of the variable. So let's start the same as we always would. There's my variable. My goal is to get that variable by itself. I need to do any adding or subtracting first. So before I even worry about the fraction, I want to add 7 to both sides. Negative 7, positive 7 gives me a 0. On the left side, I have 2/3 x, and then on the right side, I have equals 12. Notice my steps are separated with that horizontal line. My equal signs keep rolling right down the middle. Now we have 2/3 times x. To undo multiplying by 2/3, we divide by 2/3. We talked yesterday how to do that in our calculators. We also talked about, instead of dividing by 2/3, that was the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, or in other words, flipping that second fraction. So whichever is easiest for you, you're more than welcome to use the calculator. So if we have 12 and we divide by 2/3, or if we multiply by 3/2, whichever way you like, we get x equals 18. So question 12 and now 13 and 14, we're not going to treat them any differently just because there's fractions in them. Our steps don't change, and we talked about that yesterday with the one-step equations. Our steps aren't going to change just because there's a fraction involved. So as we move on to 13, there's our variable, there's our c. We start by undoing the plus 9. So on the left side, we get negative 10. And then on the right side, I still have negative 5/8 times c. To undo negative 5/8 times c, we need to divide by it. Or if you want to multiply by the reciprocal, you can. It's up to you how you want to handle that piece. And we end up with 16 equals c. Last but not least, number 14. There's my m, my variable. We undo the subtraction first. Over on the left side, I'm left with 1/3 m. On the right side, I have 15. 1/3 times m, to undo that, I divide by 1/3, or multiply by the reciprocal, which would be 3. So 15 divided by 1/3 is 45. Again, please make sure you are still taking the time to check. I refreshed you on how to check in numbers 9 and 10. So make sure as you're working today that you are checking your answers. So now the rest of the time today, you're going to spend working on some more practice with the two-step equations. Please make sure you're using pages 5 and 6 in your notes packet as a resource. If you come across something you're stuck on, see if maybe you've done a problem like it before. That might help get you started.